All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Telivy MSP podcast. Very excited to introduce our guest today. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So my name's Kevin Bellier, and I'm an MSP in Eastern Canada, so on the Atlantic side, and we're headquartered in St. John and Halifax. And like I said, my name's Kevin Bellier, and I run a team of IT professionals, really helping small to mid-sized customers, mostly in Atlantic Canada, but we also do have a presence elsewhere in the country.
Very, very cool. And a quick intro for me, for those who don't know. Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremy. I'm the head of partnerships at Telivy, and we do automated risk assessments for MSPs to win clients and monitor existing clients. So let's dive right into it. Actually, I had a follow-up question on your intro. How big is your team at Spartan Systems?
Yeah, so we've got a team of 7, and they're mostly local. But I do have a couple of remote people as well that we've added on in the last 6 months.
Very, very cool. I want to throw this question into the feature. I do want to ask you about the importance of having a local team, and also want to understand more of the work that you do. But real quick, you have a ton of expertise in the industry, 20-year career in IT. Could you briefly, for our audience, summarize all those 20 years?
Yeah, so just quickly, I'll give you my quick elevator pitch on it. So I'm a professional accountant, so I'm a CPA. So probably 25 years ago, I got a CMA designation, which is now part of the CPA program. So really, I kind of say I became a professional accountant, so I didn't have to do accounting. So in the early days, I did work as an accountant. And when I first started this business, so I didn't start the business, but I joined it probably 5 years after its inception. And we were really doing ERP systems. So back then we were helping clients install, set up, and manage ERP systems. So accounting software applications. So back then they were all run on premise. And so there was a couple of us in that company, and we were professional accountants. So we had the skills and the expertise to set up those systems. And then the byproduct of that was that those companies needed somebody to set up a file server or to set up their workstations and connect to that ERP. So we became technical as well during that process. So the business really evolved so that initially it was the majority of the work was ERP. And then obviously as client needs arose, we began doing more and more IT work. So servers and networks and workstations and then email. So it over a period of time. So I worked for that company for 2 years and then I bought it. So probably within the first 10 years of me buying it, we really shifted to probably 50 to 75% IT work, and the remainder was ERP. And then in the last 5 years, we get rid of the ERP portion and broke that off and got rid of that. And we now just focus on IT services for small to mid-sized companies. So kind of under 400 people on the network is what I define a mid-sized company here. And so we really focus on 3 main areas, and Jeremy, we can talk about them in more detail, but cybersecurity, cloud solutions such as AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, and Teams Voice in a nutshell.
Wow, very, very cool. I have so many questions. I'm curious. So you mentioned you started in accounting and you became an accounting professional to not do accounting. Could you elaborate on that? Was it just, not your interest or, fit your personality? And I'm very curious how that led into you sort of shifting more and more into IT, like discovering IT. Did you find yourself enjoying the more technical side of it as well? Yeah, I'm curious about all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I became an accountant I've never worked in audit. That is not my personality. My best days are not spent behind a desk. So I would much prefer to be out meeting with customers, meeting with prospects, and talking about kind of real world problems. Not that accountants don't do that, but really I like to talk to business owners about their challenges technology wise and how we can help them, not just deal with problems, but help them use technology to grow or to leverage it as an asset or to make it easier to have a remote sales team or to open a branch office. So those are the challenges I like. And, I love it. I love seeing my clients doubling growth over a 2-year period and bring more people on board and serve their markets. Like that to me is, obviously my team grows at the same time, but seeing that growth is really is quite rewarding. So yeah, if I can not be behind a desk, I'm a happy camper.
Very, very cool. Let's talk about Spartan Systems today, and your customers. Could you tell us more about what these challenges that you see are and these growth opportunities that you see with your clients? And what are your solutions to all of those things?
Yeah, so just I guess the challenges we see are business owners have a lot of questions. Security seems overwhelming to them. So obviously we're hearing about cybersecurity incidents on the news every day. It's happening in Canada, it's happening in the US, it's happening around the world. It's affecting small businesses, medium businesses, and obviously enterprise and government to an equal extent. And, we don't hear about the small businesses that are affected or that are put out of business or that are forced to not operate for 20 or 30 or 40 days while they recover. So, these issues are, these are happening on a daily basis. So I guess our mandate right now is to educate our clients and our potential clients on, what should be done as far as cybersecurity goes. Where do they need to be? Obviously, they don't want to invest all of their time, all of their resources, and all of their money into technology or to keeping their data safe. But there's a certain level of protection that we can offer them to really, really raise that baseline for them and to really up their level of preparedness. So we can't prevent everything, but we can certainly help them raise the bar drastically. So that's one area of growth that we're seeing, and a lot of questions coming from business owners.
How do you do the education? Do you, do like a presentation? Do you like go and talk to individual people when you're at events and educate them that way? And could you give us an example, right? Clients watching this podcast, what is one piece of education you would like to, convey and deliver to them?
Yeah, so right now, how we're conveying it is we're going to every single client we have. I have a goal of seeing every single client to talk about cybersecurity before the end of Q3, which is September. And so we started this in January of this year. And really the goal there is to sit down and have a conversation with every single business owner or decision maker to let them know where do they stand, like what's their baseline. Sometimes there's some misconceptions. They might think that everything is perfect, everything is covered, they'll never have an incident. Well, I'd like to let them know that no matter how much preparedness they do, there still is some vulnerability. However, we can help them be very, very well protected, and we can also help them, put them in a position where they can recover extremely quick if there is an incident, or really limit the blast radius of that incident if there is something. So that's kind of that's what we're doing with our existing clients. And then really any clients that come to us as new clients, these are some of the first conversations we're having. Where do you sit? Do you know where you are? Have you ever done an assessment of your environment? And in a lot of cases, the question is no, or they might have got maybe they had a penetration test 2 years ago, which a penetration test is really externally looking in, kind of testing their network and their infrastructure is but it doesn't typically talk about or look at the people or the software or the processes. So we're really trying to step back a bit from that.
And why is that distinction so important, right? A penetration test outside looking in versus looking at the people and the risks on the devices themselves, let's say, for someone who's not technical.
Yeah, so typically I shouldn't say most, a very high percentage of breaches involve what we would say phishing, or I guess end user, there's another term for it, but really social engineering. So, and in layman's terms, it's tricking the employees into doing something that they shouldn't do, or they should know the ramifications of. So, it doesn't matter how good your firewall is, or how good your servers are patched. If an end user clicks on something that's malicious, they're doing that from within the network, from within that trusted zone. So we really try and convey the importance of training people. That's a big part of people. They can be an area that's often exploited in terms of security, but they can also be a major asset, or a strong feature, if people have been kind of educated and trained over a period of time.
Yeah, and these types of attacks are so easy to do and so common too, right? We've all gotten those emails sent from someone we know at our company from the company address, right? It looks real. Or it's the administrator saying, hey, reset your password. You click the link, now you give them your password. So it just happens all the time. How do you help the client understand what their baseline is and where they stand? Maybe compared to other similar companies, or compared to just how safe they are, right, to an attack. How do you mention assessments? How do you run these assessments, right, that are different from the external penetration tests?
Yeah, so really what we do is, that's one of the, so I was talking about doing this with all of our clients this year. So it typically takes us 4 weeks to do an assessment at each client. And so we call it a cybersecurity risk assessment. So we use tools such as Telivy to help us understand what the environment looks like, not just routers and switches and servers, but do you do end user security awareness training? Do you store personally identifiable information on endpoints, meaning laptops and desktops? Are those machines backed up? Are those machines up to date? Are there software vulnerabilities on those machines with third-party software? Because obviously, we all need to use something more than just Microsoft operating systems and Mac OS. We need other tools such as Microsoft Office and Adobe and our accounting software. So we really try and look at the big picture in order to sit down with the business owner at the end of that 4-week period and say, Mr. Business Owner, here's your current security baseline. These are the gaps that we see. These are the vulnerabilities that you should be aware of, because it's your data, it's your organization, and these are your employees. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah,
absolutely. You present the information in a very an easy way for them to consume and understand why this is a risk, how big the risk is, right, and cost to your company.
And we present it in a very easy way, but often it's shocking for the business owner to, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
So they might have no idea that one of their employees has multiple Excel files with credit cards in all of them, or that the HR department, often stores social insurance numbers on their local machines. So those, or they're using some external, the business owner might not know they have some external file sharing tools that they didn't either approve of or know about, or they're just unaware.
Yeah. And I think the beauty of it is, as the client and the company, you don't have to know everything, right? Talk to Kevin. Kevin can find it all out and fix it and patch the vulnerabilities for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your customers? I'm very curious, since you came from the accounting, a kind of software sort of finance industry. Today with Spartan Systems, I'm curious, is it sort of industry agnostic, right? Is there like healthcare and, like electric companies or could you tell me a little bit about your customers?
Yeah, so our typical client is owner managed, meaning that there's an owner that's actively involved in the business. And those businesses range from 5 people up to about right now, about probably 250, 300 people on the network in that owner managed scenario. We do have a few clients that are not owner managed, but our typical one is the industries that we would serve. I mean, I guess we would say we're fairly agnostic. However, when I look at a cross section, it's typically insurance brokers, law firms, construction companies, light manufacturing, and nonprofits are kind of, if I slice and dice it, would be in that respect.
I'm curious. So could you give me some examples? You don't have to name names of like, I guess, challenges or growth opportunities, or like just, case studies, right? Customer case studies, how you helped a certain customer. I'm curious also, like, what they come to you for. Do they come to you knowing the risks? Or do you find them and educate them and they go, oh my God, I'm shocked, right? and then you fix it.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, since I've been involved in this business, we've had very, very little turnover with clients. Obviously, there's a bit of natural turnover, but very, very few. We still have some of the original clients we had when I joined this business.
Wow.
The ones that we brought on, we've gone out and found some of them. Largely they're by referral or they call us looking for support. And, I guess as far as some of the problems we solve, I guess more and more our clients have very, very little infrastructure on premise other than a network connection. So they have a WAN connection from their ISP, and increasingly we're finding that their employees, obviously in the last few years, their employees are distributed. They want to be able to, not only do the employees want to work from home, but the owners want to be able to hire the right talent, irregardless of where they live, within reason. Time zones obviously matter in terms of keeping kind of the business together in that respect, but increasingly the owners they're wanting solutions so that they can hire somebody that's that's not local, but that has a skill set that's going to help them propel their business forward. So they want that employee to feel like they're part of the team. They want them to have access to the tools they need, but they also want it to be secure. Because there can be some uncomfort with opening up your data, whether it's on-premise server, cloud server, SharePoint, OneDrive. There can be some discomfort with granting access to that. So really, just as an example, we've got a client in the aquaculture space, and they're fairly distributed around Eastern Canada and Central Canada. So meaning they have a lot of different remote sites where they do their fish farming. And, when they hire somebody in a remote location, they don't necessarily want us to visit that location and set that employee up. We've sat down with that company and determined that, this individual will have this certain level of security access. We can then drop ship them an endpoint or a laptop. They simply open it up and log on with their email address and password, and it auto provisions within an hour everything they need to get their job done. So they start kind of on day one with the tools they need. We make it really easy for them, and that new employee has access to everything they need, but nothing more. And so we're really fine-tuning that so that we can help companies like that grow securely. And it makes it for a seamless onboarding experience for the employee, at least from an IT point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does seem very seamless, both, for the employer and the employee as well, that you all can step in and take care of all this and smooth out the process, just a drop ship, right, and automatic provisioning. So I'm curious, you mentioned you work with small and medium businesses, mostly owner managed. Do you see any differences between your customers, or do they all sort of behave and have this similar problems and solutions, or is it more custom?
I mean, obviously every business is different. Every business owner is different. I think none of them want to be sitting behind a desk like me. So we're very similar in that perspective. But really what we try and do is we try and establish a really reasonable baseline for technical capabilities and security for those clients. And obviously then there's variations. Some need remote access, some don't. Some are all in one location, others aren't, they're distributed. But we don't want our clients to be and we don't want to enable them to have their IT like the Wild West, or operating like the Wild West. We want there to be some structure and some logic to it.
Absolutely. We touched on this a little bit before, because y'all use Telivy to run your automated risk assessments.
Yes.
How did you meet Nareen, our CEO?
So I met him in person for the first time in I think it was in Nashville several months ago. So we'd obviously chatted by email and maybe had a Teams call or something before then. But so I met him at an industry event in Nashville a few months ago, and actually had a good chance for him and I to go-karting together. So he lost miserably. and that's why you see there's a gold trophy directly behind me. So I won the gold trophy. Nareen did not. So
that's a great story.
But it was good. It was good to see some of the Telivy people at some of these industry events talking to other MSPs about their challenges, the opportunities, and honestly, he and his team were actively looking for feedback on your product, your process, and because you're obviously in a massive growth mode. And you seem to be quite receptive to feedback. So that's awesome to see.
Yeah, I think that's I'm not gonna say R because that sounds like bragging. I think that's one of the teams, Noreen and Vijay's strongest suits is being able to know what to ask, get the feedback, open to it, change it, be very, very responsive to it, and see the next update come out. So what was the conference, if I may ask, and maybe for the other MSPs in our audience, how do you go about your day-to-day as an MSP owner? What are some of the conferences that you think folks have to go to? Some advice maybe.
Yeah, so I think it's important to stay current and relevant. And so this was actually at a Chris Weiser 7-figure MSP event that was hosted in Nashville probably 2 months ago. And I think there's probably a couple hundred other MSPs that were there. And it's not only did they bring in really good speakers to talk about what's going on in our industry so that we can then have those conversations with our clients, but it's a chance for me as a business owner to talk to other IT business owners. What are you doing? What's working? What's not working? Where do you think your clients will be in the next 6 months? What will you be doing in the next 6 months technology wise? What are you seeing? So I look at it as a really good chance to not only hear from some industry speakers, but to talk to other people that have bigger and smaller businesses than mine in my space to, and it's a non-competitive environment other than the go-karting. But there's a good chance to be very open about what's working, what's not. And I want to make sure that we're, I don't think we're bleeding edge, but I would say we want to be at the forefront in our industry in terms of what we're offering to our customers, and make sure that they have really solid solutions that enable them to grow.
What do you think? I just lost my question. Why I found it again. I found that very fascinating. You mentioned that the culture and the community is very non-competitive. How is that possible? What is sort of the special sauce that makes it, or is it because there's the market's so big, or because everybody sort of has their own local focus, regional focus, or Yeah, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been involved in some other groups as well, and they've never been ultra competitive from a, like, nobody's trying to steal anybody else's clients. Well, I mean, that might happen a bit, but I would say you're probably not going to excel in that environment if you're just there
Mm,
to try and get somebody else's clients. Now I'm in Eastern Canada, so I'm not in a Boston, Nashville, LA, Toronto market. So the chance of me running into other MSPs like myself at that event, there'd be fewer of them there. So, they're the same MSPs I'm going to run into at a local event, likely. And, generally, I think most business owners are pretty candid about what they're doing, and they're not out to steal anybody else's clients. I mean, would tend to show in the client facing conversations anyway. And I think in the long term, it would never work out. You
yeah.
might snag some clients once in a while, but I don't think it would be a long-term fit if that's your only, ulterior motive for going to these. So, it's a long way to fly and a lot of money to spend to try and steal somebody else's clients. I'd rather
Yeah.
try and educate myself.
Right. So the education piece, and I wonder if that has something to play into it as well, because there's so much new information coming out. You mentioned just, going to the conference, asking the MSPs, 6 months from now, clients, what problems, challenges. And I wonder if it's because there's so much information to share and so much benefit from, helping each other out, right? Because there's new tech coming out, new tools, new vulnerabilities, risks constantly, right? Exploits. Yeah, so I find that very, very, very interesting.
So typically when I come back from these events, I'm trying to bring a lot of information to my technical people and helping them plan their education for the next quarter or the next 12 months. I mean, in my company, we set goals every quarter. Everybody has to have a certain number of goals for themselves during a 3-month window. And one of those goals is always training. So, and it's not just do an hour a week. It's a specific training objective. It might be a Microsoft certification, or it might be to learn a new tool like Telivy or something else so that we can incorporate that into our business. So really, I tend to come back with, with a lot of goals, professional development goals for my team. So I can share with them, okay, here's what other MSPs are doing. Here's where they're training their staff or how they're training their staff. And, I mean, there's a ton of training out there. As you know, most of it's available online in that format. So my staff could spend 8 hours a day training. Now, none of them want to do that. But if we can focus on, say, 4 hours a week of training per person, in a month's time, that sets them up quite well for a new certification, or at least to move down that certification path.
Wow, very cool. I really appreciate as a business owner that you look after your team that much too, right? I'm sure there's other business owners in any industry that might just think about, do the work, execute, but considering career development. And I think that's in long term very beneficial to the business too, right? These folks get the training in, they're expand their skill set and experience, they get these certifications, that more opportunities and doors open for them, and work for your company as well. You mentioned Telivy a moment ago. I was just curious. So when you met Naran and completely crushed him at go-kart and started using Telivy, what was the impact of Telivy specifically? Because you used to run risk assessments manually, I'm assuming, and Telivy sort of brought the automated and also the conglomeration of dashboard and report. I was just curious how it impacted you and your team.
Yes. So really what it's done is, so when we run a cybersecurity risk assessment, that 4-week process, part of it is installing software on endpoints. Part of it's doing security awareness training or phishing campaigns, I should say. Part of it's externally focused, looking at whether there's unusual or illegitimate login attempts to some of their cloud applications. So really what Televy's allowed us to do is consolidate most of that on the Telivy platform. We don't do it all on there, but it's meant that we have fewer individual pieces of software to install at client sites. And Telivy gives us a really nice comprehensive reporting dashboard, so we can see, okay, we've installed this on, of the 25 machines that we're aiming for, a couple have failed, they need to reboot, or something's going on with this one. But we get the data we need within a week at the most from that platform. So it shortens down part of our assessment. There's other pieces that we do as part of that 4-week assessment that still take an extra 2 to 3 weeks. But the Telivy piece really shortens down the time for us to gather data. And what happens is, if we've got access to a big chunk of data from the client site within the first week, well, then maybe we need to go back and talk to the business owner and ask a few more questions so we can dig a little deeper during the assessment, instead of waiting for the end of the 4 weeks and piling it all together and then saying, oh, geez, we really could use another week or two to get some more info. We've already, generally when we start the assessment, if we started on the 1st of July, we typically book the presentation with a client for the first week of August. So we tend to book it 4 to 5 weeks out. So I don't like going back to the client saying, oh, we need another week or two, or we're not sure. So anyway, to answer your question, Telivy has really shortened the time frame down on some of the critical pieces of that assessment for us. So it saved us a bit of work, but gave us access to more information quicker, which is really the big benefit in my mind.
Wow, more information quicker. Yeah, thank you for that. That was really amazing hearing that from you. And I love that you highlighted, because this is something I hadn't thought about before personally, that Telivy gets you all the results, all the information the first week. That gives you time before the presentation to prepare, to make a more fuller, comprehensive assessment, to do the presentation, sell the client way better by that 1st of August week. I did remember when you talked about, oh, we normally have to install the software on each device manually. I did remember, Telivy does that automatically. You run a script and then it just installs it and then gives you the status, and when everything's done, you could just boom, hit a button and run the assessment, and you get all the results. Very, very cool. As we sort of get to the end of the podcast, I'd love to hear, 20 years of experience. Do you have learnings you'd like to share with our MSP audience or client audience, or just, people, right, in general, whether it's technical around IT, whether it's sales, marketing, business, as an entrepreneur and working in your space with your customers, or personal, right? Like, how has your journey, your career affected you, or maybe changed you as a person?
How much time do we have? I mean, Jeremy, you just mentioned 6 things I can talk about. So I'll talk about kind of the first most relevant one, or the one that comes to mind first is, so, we've been, I guess in my business, my clients have been dealing with ransomware, we'll call them ransomware events, for the last, I would say it's probably been 6 years, maybe 7 years since they first started appearing. And I don't mean en masse at my client base, but I'm just saying in general with businesses is kind of about 7 years from what I can recall. So, if I could go back, I really wish that I was doing a risk assessment with my clients then. I'm sure it would have looked much different than it does now. There wouldn't have been tools like Telivy or my clients didn't have as much data in the cloud then, but there still were risks, and they weren't always outward facing. They were still social engineering, phishing attempts with users. So I really wish I had the mindset and the tools back then to sit down with the business owners and say, hey, we need to make some incremental changes over the next year. I mean, it would have been a tougher sell because it didn't seem as pressing, but I mean, I remember helping a client literally probably 7 years ago buy Bitcoin to pay $2,000 worth of ransom, because something had been encrypted. So I guess the takeaway there is I should have bought more Bitcoin than I did. And but really it was more reactive then. So I wish I was in a position to be more proactive and really had the mindset to do that. So I think having an industry group like I'm involved in, and then also having tools like Telivy really make it easier for me to get into that mindset to sit down with clients and have these honest conversations about where things are as far as security goes in their environment. So that's kind of two takeaways, I guess: security and Bitcoin.
Yep, there you go. And I find that talking to a bunch of MSPs these past few weeks, being proactive rather than reactive, that's a common theme in terms of what MSPs try to communicate and educate their clients on, and also MSPs themselves. I did have a curious question. So I noticed you built this empire in Canada and have a ton of experience. Were you born and raised in Canada? What's the story there?
Yeah, you know what? I live in the same town that I was born in. I like to say I haven't found a reason to leave. It's beautiful here. As you can tell, summer has finally arrived. So we have maybe 2.5 months of sunshine ahead of us, some really nice warm weather. But no, it's Eastern Canada. So St. John, New Brunswick, right on the Atlantic Ocean, the Bay of Fundy.
Oh, wow.
So I like to be close to the ocean. It does keep the weather a little more temperate. It's certainly not hot here, but it's a beautiful place to be. And I haven't found a reason to leave yet, even though I've been fortunate enough to travel to some other locations. This is where I will, keep my business headquartered, will be here. Even though you alluded to me having an empire, it's still based in small town Eastern Canada, which is where I plan on keeping it. So.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. And just as you were describing just how beautiful it was, I could feel like the sunshine, coming from here, and then like a breeze, like an ocean Atlantic breeze. And in your hometown, nonetheless, that's absolutely incredible. Well, thank you so much for this interview and your wealth of information and your experience and your advice. As we wrap up, who should reach out to you? Who do you want to talk to, and what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so you know what? I want to hear from business owners that want to talk about positioning their business for growth. It's not just about cybersecurity. It's about giving employees secure remote access to their environment so that their employees can either work from anywhere, or so they can hire talent that's not in their local region. So we really want to be an enabler for business owners. So the best way to reach us is Spartan Systems. So spartansystems.ca, SPARTAN, systems with an S.ca. And listen, get in touch. We'd love to have an initial conversation, a no obligation chat about kind of what's keeping you up at night from a technology point of view.
Absolutely. And the link will be in the description. Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Yes.
It was great to talk to you.
Thank
Enjoy
you
the
all.
day.